Everything in this video, including videos and educational content, has been taken from the internet, books, or any available documentary evidence. Hello friends, I warmly welcome you all to the channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today's story is about a jailbreak. This is a jailbreak unlike any other in history. Why? Because escaping from this prison was considered impossible. This story will thrill you, as the way they broke out of this high-security prison shocked everyone. At the same time, this case holds many mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. I am talking about one of the world's most dangerous prisons, a prison located in California, USA, about 2 kilometers off the coast of San Francisco, on an isolated island called Alcatraz. Although this prison was built in 1910, it was initially used only by the U.S. Army. However, in 1933, when the Army left, the U.S. Department of Justice converted it into a Federal Bureau of Prisons facility on August 11, 1934. This prison was specially designed for notorious criminals and gangsters, particularly those who had previously escaped from other prisons or had attempted to break free. Alcatraz was known as the world's most dangerous prison because anyone who attempted to escape either died or was caught. The armed guards were given strict orders to shoot to kill any escaping prisoners. Even if someone managed to slip past the security, there was no way out. The prison was surrounded by cold ocean waters with strong waves, making escape nearly suicidal. No one could survive in those freezing waters for more than 20 minutes. Because of this, Alcatraz was considered escape-proof, a fortress from which no one could break out. This story revolves around 4 main characters. Frank Morris was a criminal mastermind from childhood. At just 13 years old, he committed his first crime. As he grew older, his criminal activities increased. He was arrested for bank robbery and sentenced to 10 years in Louisiana State Penitentiary. However, he managed to escape from the Louisiana prison. A year later, he was caught again. On January 20th, 1960, he was transferred to Alcatraz prison. Allen West was convicted of car theft and sent to Florida prison. After attempting an escape, he was transferred to Alcatraz in 1957, 3 years before Morris arrived. Interestingly, Frank Morris and Allen West had met before in Florida prison. On October 24, 1960, John Anglin arrived at Alcatraz. Just 2.5 months later, on January 10, 1961, Clarence Anglin, John's brother, also arrived at Alcatraz. Both Anglin brothers were convicted of bank robbery and had previously attempted to escape from Atlanta prison. Coincidentally, they had also met Frank Morris and Allen West in Florida prison before coming to Alcatraz. Since all 4 men already knew each other, their time in prison became somewhat easier. However, because they arrived at different times, the Anglin brothers and Allen West were assigned cells in B Block, while Frank Morris was kept in a different barrack. To fix this, in September 1968, Morris requested a transfer to B Block, which was approved. He was moved to a cell right next to Allen West. Now that all 4 men were in the same block, they could talk to each other freely. Alcatraz had extremely strict security measures. Each prisoner was kept in a separate cell, and prisoners were counted 13 times a day. Despite its brutal security, prisoners were given certain privileges. For example, those who enjoyed painting were allowed to paint in their cells. For those who love reading, the library had thousands of books, and for those who were passionate about music, musical instruments were also provided. Apart from that, every night in the jail, there was a 1 to 1.5 hour music session where all the prisoners played their instruments. Prem also had a love for music, so he had taken up an instrument that he played during music time. As you may know, prisoners in jail are assigned different tasks to keep them from getting bored and to help them earn some money. Frank Morris was given a job in the library, Clarence Anglin was assigned to cut the prisoners' hair, and John Anglin was responsible for cleaning the entire block and painting the cells. One day, while John was cleaning the upper block area, a lot of dust and dirt started falling from above. The guards, irritated by the mess, called him down and scolded him, saying, "Do your work properly." John replied, "If we clean the top, dust will naturally fall, but if you put up a curtain, the dust won't reach the bottom." When this idea reached the prison authorities, they approved it. A curtain was installed, and from then on, the dust no longer fell down. Time passed, and soon June 1962 arrived. At exactly 7:15 a.m., as usual, the prison alarm rang to wake up the inmates, and roll call began. The guards started counting the prisoners. When they reached Alan West's cell, they found him standing inside. Then, moving to the adjacent cell, which belonged to Frank Morris, they saw that he was still asleep. The guard called out, "Morris, wake up!" But there was no response. They shouted again, but Morris remained motionless. Annoyed, a guard reached through the bars and struck him on the head. The moment the guard's hand hit Morris's head, the head rolled off the bed and fell to the floor. Seeing this, the guard froze in shock. Stepping back in horror, he examined the fallen head closely and realized it wasn't a real head at all. It was a dummy. Panic set in. The guard immediately blew his whistle, and within moments, other prison officers arrived. They rushed to check 2 more cells and discovered that those prisoners were also missing. Their beds also had fake heads. The Anglin brothers and Frank Morris had escaped. For the first time ever in the history of Alcatraz, the emergency siren rang across the prison. Before this, 31 prisoners had tried to escape Alcatraz on 12 different occasions, but every single attempt had failed. 7 were captured, 6 were shot dead, 2 drowned in the bay, 2 were executed in the gas chamber for killing guards during their escape attempt. But this time was different. Morris and the Anglin brothers had successfully vanished without anyone noticing. When the prison warden heard about the escape, he was in utter disbelief. Alcatraz was designed to be escape-proof, yet these 3 men had managed to flee. A massive manhunt began. Every corner of the prison and the island was searched, but there was no sign of the 3 fugitives. The discovery of the secret tunnel. When investigators searched the inmates' cells, they made a shocking discovery. The back walls of their cells had large holes, big enough for a person to crawl through. Further inspections revealed that Alan West's cell had a similar hole behind it, but unlike the others, West was still inside. West was immediately interrogated. At first, he refused to speak, but when he was offered a deal, if he cooperated, his sentence would be reduced. He decided to confess. West revealed that when Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960, he already had an escape plan in mind. He soon befriended the Anglin brothers and Alan West, convincing them to join him. Over time, Morris discovered that above the prison cells, there was a ventilation duct covered by a metal grill. If they could remove the grill, they could crawl through the duct and reach the prison roof. But first, they needed to escape their own cells. The problem? The cell doors were made of reinforced steel, impossible to cut through. Then, they noticed something. The walls of their cells were old and slightly brittle. Below their sink, there was a small vent that led into a utility corridor behind the cells. Morris, West, and the Anglin brothers began secretly digging through their vents, using stolen spoons, chisels, and even a makeshift drill made from a vacuum cleaner motor. Every night, they worked under the cover of loud music, ensuring that the sound of drilling was masked. To avoid suspicion, they covered the holes with fake cardboard vents, painted to match the wall. After months of work, the holes were finally big enough for them to squeeze through. Even if they reached the roof, the biggest challenge remained escaping Alcatraz Island itself. The freezing waters and strong currents made swimming almost impossible. Morris had a solution. While working in the library, he had read a popular mechanics magazine that described how raincoats could be used to make inflatable rafts. They secretly collected over 50 raincoats, sewing them together to form a raft and life jackets. On the night of June 11, 1962, the 4 prisoners were ready. However, Alan West got stuck in his hole and couldn't join the others. By the time he managed to free himself, the others had already escaped. Morris and the Anglin brothers climbed through the ventilation shaft, reached the roof, and made their way to the shoreline. They inflated their raft using a stolen concertina and set off into the dark waters of San Francisco Bay. No one knows for sure. Their bodies were never found. In the following weeks, a homemade paddle and pieces of the raft were discovered on a nearby island. But the fate of Morris and the Anglin brothers remains a mystery. Did they drown, or did they successfully escape and start a new life? To this day, the Alcatraz escape remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history. When they realized there was no way out, they started thinking of a new plan. As I mentioned earlier in the story, one day while cleaning above the ceiling, a lot of dust and dirt started falling. In reality, Allen intentionally dropped the dust so that he could get permission to put up a curtain in that area. Eventually, their trick worked, and they got permission to install a curtain. Now behind that curtain, they could do whatever they wanted. Once the upper part of their plan was solved, another challenge came to mind. What would happen when they had to climb back up? This was a major problem because the prison had guards patrolling 24/7, and if any of them went missing from their cell, the guards would immediately notice. That's when they played their masterstroke. They created fake heads using soap, toothpaste, toilet paper, and dust. Then they crafted the heads to resemble their own faces. The prisoners who painted in the jail provided skin-colored paint, which they used to paint the dummy heads. Another important detail was the hair on these fake heads. Luckily, Gladly was responsible for cutting prisoners' hair, so they stole real hair and glued it onto the dummies. Every night, as soon as the lights went out, Frank Morris, Anglin, and West placed the dummy heads on their pillows. They arranged blankets and towels under the covers to mimic body shapes and left a small portion of the dummy heads exposed to avoid suspicion. Then, they sneaked through the hole in the wall, reached the back gallery, and climbed up using the pipes. For several days, they continued their plan. During this time, they made 4 life jackets and a 14-foot-long rubber boat using raincoats. To build the boat, they stitched together pieces of raincoats and used a hot steel pipe to seal the seams, ensuring no air could escape. They also stole wooden planks from the prison to create 4 paddles. Every night, they secretly loosened the bolts of the ventilation grill on the roof. They started executing their escape plan in December 1968, and by June 1962, their work was complete. In those 6 months, they had dug holes in the walls, created fake heads, made life jackets, and built a large boat. Finally, they chose June 11, 1962, as the day to escape. On Monday night, June 11, 1962, at around 9:30 p.m., after the prisoner count, the prison lights were turned off. The 4 of them placed their dummy heads on their beds and crawled through the hole in the wall to the gallery. However, Everest had an issue. He had accidentally used too much cement while sealing his cell's vent, making it extremely difficult to remove. While he struggled to open it, the other 3 decided to proceed with the plan and asked him to follow as soon as he freed himself. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers climbed the pipes to the roof and removed the ventilation grill. They waited for Everest for a while, but when he didn't show up, they decided to move forward. They reached the roof's edge and used a 150-foot-long pipe to climb down. Then they crossed the 12-foot-high barbed wire fence and secretly made their way to the shore. Morris then pulled out his homemade concertina, a device he had designed to inflate their boat. Using the concertina, they filled their rubber raft with air and set it afloat. The 3 of them got into the boat and disappeared into the dark sea. Meanwhile, Everest finally managed to break free and reached the rooftop. He found the life jacket and paddle that his companions had left for him. However, by the time he reached the escape point, it was too late. The others had already sailed away into the ocean. Left with no other option, he returned to his cell. The next morning, the entire prison staff was shocked. No one had even suspected that the 4 inmates had been working on such a foolproof escape plan right under their noses. Immediately, a massive search operation was launched. Police officers, coast guards, and local authorities scoured the island, searching caves and every possible hiding spot. Helicopters were sent out to scan the ocean, but there was no trace of them. When no evidence was found, the FBI, America's most renowned federal agency, was called in to investigate. The FBI officials were stunned by the brilliance of Frank Morris and his team's plan. They then questioned Allen about what the escapees had planned after reaching the ocean. Allen revealed that after leaving the island, their plan was to first reach Angel Island, which was about 3 kilometers away from the prison. From there, they would travel half a mile further to reach the mainland. Once in the city, they intended to steal a car, change their clothes, and disappear forever. This was the last known detail about the legendary Alcatraz escape. What happened to them after that remains a mystery. Sabi also started searching for all 3 of them with full force. They thoroughly searched Ranger Island, but they didn't find any clues there either. Soon, the news spread across America like wildfire, creating a massive uproar. This was because the prison, which was considered impossible to break out of, had been breached. The Alcatraz prison, which America took pride in as being escape-proof, had been broken out of by 3 prisoners. It was a huge embarrassment. 2 days after their escape, on June 13, 1962, a paddle was found floating in the sea between Alcatraz prison and Angel Island. The paddle was identical to the one the 3 prisoners had made. This indicated that one of the families involved had indeed used that paddle to enter the sea. The very next day, June 14, 1962, the FBI found a small bag floating near Angel Island. This bag was made from the raincoats stolen from the prison. Inside the bag, they found 88 family photos of the Anglin brothers, along with some college documents containing various addresses. The investigation continued, and within the next 10 days, the FBI discovered 3 life jackets floating in different parts of the sea. These were the same life jackets worn by Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin on the night of the escape. However, no bodies were found, nor was the raft they had used for their escape. The investigation went on for several months until October arrived. In October 1962, a Norwegian cargo ship named SS Norefjell reported seeing a body floating in the sea near the Golden Gate Bridge on July 17, 1962, about a month after the prison break. The body was wearing light-colored prison clothes. However, since the ship was en route to Canada and did not want any delays, they did not stop. When they returned and reported the sighting, the FBI immediately questioned the crew and searched the area. The body was reportedly about 28 kilometers northwest of the Golden Gate Bridge. Despite extensive searching, they found no trace of the body. By then, over 3 months had passed, making it unlikely to recover any remains. Approximately 9 months after the jailbreak, Alcatraz prison had to be shut down. Running the prison cost 3 times more than any other prison. Additionally, the salty seawater and strong winds had severely weakened the prison walls, requiring maintenance costs of about $3 to $5 million. Given such expenses, if another escape occurred, it would be a complete failure. Considering these factors, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy ordered the prison's closure, and on March 21, 1963, Alcatraz was permanently shut down. The remaining prisoners were transferred to other jails. The FBI continued searching for the 3 escapees but found no solid leads. However, in January 1965, a significant breakthrough occurred. Through their informants, the FBI received information that the Anglin brothers had been spotted at a club in Brazil. Acting on this tip, the FBI sent a team to Brazil, where they investigated for several days but found no concrete evidence. Over the years, they continued monitoring the Anglin family, tapping their phones and conducting surveillance, but no further clues emerged. Finally, after 17 years, on December 31, 1979, the FBI declared the case closed. They concluded that the 3 escapees had drowned after leaving the island. The homemade raft was unlikely to withstand the strong ocean waves, and if they had tried swimming, the freezing water temperature would have made survival nearly impossible. Moreover, the FBI stated that no cars were reported stolen on the night of their escape, making their survival unlikely. They handed the case over to the U.S. Marshals Service and officially removed it from their records. However, many people refused to believe that the escapees had died. Even the FBI's investigation was questioned because neither their bodies nor any conclusive evidence proving their deaths was ever found. Over the years, multiple incidents and reports suggested that they may have survived. One theory suggests that after escaping, they followed the exact plan outlined by Alan West, another inmate who was supposed to escape with them but was left behind. According to this theory, they reached Angel Island, stole clothes and a car, and disappeared forever. Although the FBI initially stated that no car thefts occurred that night, a 2011 National Geographic documentary revealed that a blue 1955 Chevrolet had been reported stolen from Marin County the day after the escape. Another argument against the FBI's theory was that it was supposedly impossible to survive the cold waters surrounding Alcatraz. However, this was disproven just 6 months after the escape when another prisoner, John Paul Scott, managed to swim across the bay to the Golden Gate Bridge. Though he was eventually caught and suffered from hypothermia, he survived, proving that an escape was possible. Another theory suggests that the escapees only traveled 180 meters on their raft before being picked up by a waiting boat. The reason for this specific distance is that Alcatraz's restricted zone extended up to 180 meters, beyond which any boat could be present. It is believed that the boat was arranged by another inmate, possibly a powerful gangster with external connections. The fact that the trio left without waiting for Alan West indicates that they had a strict timeline to follow, as the boat would not wait indefinitely. Supporting this theory, a San Francisco police officer named Robert Checky reported seeing a mysterious boat near the shore around 1 a.m. on June 12, 1962. He claimed that the boat remained idle for some time before sailing under the Golden Gate Bridge and disappearing into the sea. Over the years, several pieces of evidence suggested the escapees might have survived. Their family members received anonymous letters and holiday greetings for years. The Anglin brothers' mother received a bouquet of flowers every Mother's Day until her death in 1978, with no sender's name attached. At her funeral, 2 heavily disguised women were seen but disappeared shortly after. Similarly, at their father's funeral in 1989, 2 bearded men came, stood by the coffin, and wept before leaving. In 2013, the San Francisco Police Department received a letter supposedly written by John Anglin. He claimed that all 3 escapees had survived, but Frank Morris had died in 2008 and Clarence Anglin in 2011. He offered to surrender if he was given medical treatment for his cancer and received a sentence of no more than a year. The FBI analyzed the letter for fingerprints, DNA, and handwriting, but the results were inconclusive. No further action was taken. In 2015, the History Channel aired a documentary featuring a man named Fred Brizzi, a close friend of the Anglin brothers. He claimed to have met them in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 1975, and even provided a photograph of them standing in a field. Forensic experts found the image highly credible, though the subjects were wearing sunglasses, making full confirmation difficult. Now in 2022, 60 years have passed since the Alcatraz escape. The FBI claims they died that night, but various pieces of evidence suggest they were alive at least until 2008. While the FBI closed the case, the U.S. Marshals Service still considers it open and continues searching for them. If they are alive today, they would be over 90 years old. The search will continue until they are found or their centennial birthdays pass. After Alcatraz closed, it was reopened to the public in 1978. Today, thousands of visitors from around the world visit the prison daily. Books, documentaries, and films have been made about the infamous escape, but the ultimate fate of Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin remains a mystery. What do you think happened to them after their escape? Share your thoughts in the comments.